Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here. I've got to make some announcements, and then after we do announcements, I'm going to get into the main meat of this video, which is going to be talking about Mortal Empires and Total War Warhammer 2 and my thoughts on them. A lot of people have been asking me for that since when I kind of went on my hiatus. That was kind of around that ballpark time, so I haven't really vocalized my thoughts on those particular subjects, and a lot of people seem to be interested, so we'll go ahead and tackle that this time. In any event, I'm just going to have some footage from like quick battles going on in the background. It's not actually important, it's just there if you want to look at something. So in any event, before we do that, I want to go ahead and do announcements, just because I don't want to make them into their own little 5-minute stupid-ass video. So first of all, we have, if you didn't make it to the end of Archaon's video, which you guys seem to enjoy very much, and it's had very positive reception, which I'm glad for, we have hit 10,000 subscribers, which is huge. That's amazing. I hoped beyond hope that I would reach that point, and to finally be there is such a privilege, and it means a lot to me. This is kind of more than a hobby to me. It's something that's very special to me. I have a lot of my own earthly struggles, as I'm sure all of you do, and this is one of the few things in my life that I seem to be one of the best at, and I take a lot of pride in that. And all of the comments I read and all of this stuff about when I finally made my full, what I consider, return with Archaon, it meant a lot to me and warmed my heart, to say the least. So to celebrate, what I think we're going to do for 10,000 subs is that going into the Christmas season, I think what we could do somewhere in the ballpark of either right before Christmas or between Christmas and January 1st, the new year. I'm not sure exactly which, but I'm thinking we could essentially do Carrick 8 Peaks week or Carrick 8 Peaks month or whatever, where we're just going to shoot off Queek Headtaker, Skarsnik, the Warlord of 8 Peaks, and Belegar Ironhammer, the true king of Carrick 8 Peaks, just in a big batch. And if I can, I'd like to also include the lore of the war for the 8 Peaks, the original one, and how it fell, and also the lore of the 8 Peaks itself. Those last two I'm not 100% on. That's kind of more of like, I hope I can get that out, but I'm not going to like kill myself over it. I'm more interested in getting the Legendary Lords out. And but if you guys really want to see that, let me know, because that lets me know how much I need to prioritize it. As far as other announcements, there is another Legendary Lord video that's already begun work on the script. That'll be coming out fairly soon, because it's not going to be crazy long, but it is featuring a much more monstrous character, and I think y'all will enjoy that. So without further ado, I think that's pretty much everything for now. There might be more stuff coming up later, but I'm not going to worry about it. If there's any other important stuff that comes up, like before I get out the next video, then we'll do an actual announcements video, but hopefully we don't have to do that. In any event, so let's talk about Mortal Empires and Total War Warhammer 2. So they're kind of going to be rolled into the same basic conversation, but I want to separate them with starting with Warhammer 2 because my thoughts about it are a lot more concise. Total War Warhammer 2, for those of you who are wondering, I think the Vortex campaign specifically is a fantastic game. I absolutely love it, and I think it's crazy fun. The narratives, I think, for the most part, are really, really good, and I love the little cutscenes and the story elements, and I love that the Legendary Lord you play seems to have much more of a opinion about what's going on. Like, if you keep the tutorials on, they talk a lot more, and of course they have their own individual speech they give in the final campaign. And one of the things that I think is a strength of the Vortex campaign that a lot of the factions in Warhammer 1 are missing is that they, of course, have an endgame or a final battle that gives you that, oh, I'm done feeling, which I really like. You know, as opposed to Warhammer 1 where you just kind of keep going. One of the things, so that's something I really enjoy, is those big final battles. I kind of wish every race had a big final battle and you got like some awesome reward. Like in the Vortex campaign, they give you control of the Vortex, which is pretty neat. But probably my favorite version of that is Kazrak and the Beastmen, who get a special banner when they complete their final battle, the Fall of Man. Like, I love getting those little rewards that just super buff a unit or something. So in any event, overall, Total War Warhammer 2 is fantastic. I have played through every single campaign. I've played through most of them on very hard or legendary. So the thing is, I really enjoyed their campaigns. I think all of them are well done. They all feel really good. I do have a few minor complaints about the Skaven as an AI, but I'm going to kind of roll that into Mortal Empire, so we'll talk about that then. So, overall, it's well done. Overall, I think Total War Warhammer 2 in every way improves on the first game and is better than the first game. And it's a huge success, and CA should be incredibly proud of themselves. And I can't wait for all the DLC and the free LC that's coming with this game, because I think it's just going to add to a just absolutely beautifully done and awesome game. Of course, there are a few minor issues I have with it, but they're part of Mortal Empires, and they're a bigger deal in Mortal Empires. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about Mortal Empires. Mortal Empires, I have mixed feelings on. It has a lot of pros, but it also has some pretty serious cons. And so I don't want to like just bitch, so to speak, and like rant, and I'm being careful not to do that, because that's something I can do really easily. Well, it's something most humans can do easily, is find something they don't like and then just kind of hammer on it, even if they overall enjoy something. That's something I think most critics are pretty bad about, is that they just wail on something's bad sides and don't give it enough credit on the good sides. And if you're coming somewhere to just see somebody bitch about something they don't like if I did a video on the End Times, for instance, or just Games Workshop, I would talk about a lot of pros and cons. If you want to see someone who's just going to spew hate about every subject, there are other channels that you can go visit and get those experiences there. But mine's not going to be that channel. I don't want to do that. I don't think that adds anything of value to the conversation. So, let's talk about Mortal Empires, which the reason I kind of had that caveat is because it has some problems. Overall, I like Mortal Empires a lot. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it like a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. It's very big, it's very beautiful, it looks very good. The problem is it doesn't feel very good, unless you're playing very specific lords. Like, certain lords have really good campaigns. Like, I think most of the Game 2 races, not all, but most of them have very good campaigns that are genuinely fun to play. But a lot of the Game 1 lords don't. And this leads me into my biggest con, which I'm going to follow up with a pro to obviously follow it up. So let's start with my biggest issue with Mortal Empires, and that is that I don't think it was ready to be released. I think it was rushed. Mortal Empires came out a single month after Total War Warhammer 2 released, which quite frankly I think was a bad idea. Because most people didn't even have the chance to complete a campaign or get somewhere meaningful in Warhammer 2 before they completely released a brand new game. Essentially, just a totally different game. So, the biggest con I have with Mortal Empires is that it doesn't feel finished. And when I say it doesn't feel finished, I mean there are a couple of really critical problems with it. The first being that the Game 1 races are not at an acceptable point to have been published in a game. In that they should have at least been to the standard that they are currently in Warhammer 1. But the problem was, as I'm sure many of you have heard, is that Warhammer 1 got its big update that made it go from a good game to a great game with the Foundation patch, which is also when Norska was released. And for some reason, there was a communication error at CA, or just the teams were working at the same time on different projects, and the Foundation patch / Norska is not included in Mortal Empires because I guess they were made at the same time, and so... But for some reason, the Mortal Empires group didn't leave proper channels to make sure that the new stuff could get in. So I guess they have to do it from scratch or something. And I think it's really stupid that they released it without Norska. I would have been, and the Foundation patch, because the problem is you have the dwarves, the Empire, and you have all these factions that are really bleh. They're there and they're functional, but they don't, the lore trees, for instance, are super bland and horribly boring. Dwarves are probably my favorite campaign. Lizardmen are my favorite, but dwarves are a very close second. And I just can't play them. because the dwarf legendary lords in particular's trees are just so boring and just bland and gross. And on top of that, you have these issues like there's a lot of things that I feel should be common sense that should have been put in to like tweak things, and they weren't. For instance, like Dwarves' Ancestral Grudge should have been updated to include Skaven instead of just Greenskins. And like the Empire, super bland and boring. And then there's even worse ones in the Beastmen and Warriors of Chaos. They're basically broken. Beastmen campaign is my third favorite campaign to play, and it's super difficult to play because they didn't get a lot of the quality of life updates they got in the first game, where they tweaked a lot of their events and their numbers, and they tweaked like how much they get from sacking and raising and how all that system works. And because of that, the Beastman campaign is insanely difficult because the finances are just broken, and it's just not an enjoyable campaign at all. Warriors of Chaos suffer from a very similar problem, where they got some really serious quality of life upgrades in the Foundation patch. You also have people like Azhag, who I really like, who got new starting units that were really crucial to him having a better campaign. And then they released Mortal Empires, and all of those great changes they did are just completely left out. And I think it was a big mistake for CA to release an unfinished product, even if it's for free, but to release an unfinished product instead of delaying it for another month. And maybe it's because they didn't have anything else ready, and they just wanted to get Mortal Empires out of the door so they could focus on other stuff. But personally, I feel that was really irresponsible, and it doesn't look good. Mortal Empires, I don't think, is a good campaign right now, overall, for a lot of characters. And that's the thing, is it's kind of character by character basis. Or race by race basis. Some of the races work great, some of them don't. So let's talk about a positive. One of the things that I actually really enjoy about Mortal Empires is the multiplayer. I've always kind of had mixed feelings on multiplayer. Like, sometimes I really like it and sometimes I don't. But with Mortal Empires, I love the multiplayer scene now. I watch a lot of tournaments. I am starting to try and sponsor tournaments. I'm probably going to try and run my own tournament soon, though it probably won't be as like heavy as all of theirs. And I love the changes they made to make the multiplayer feel really strong, really competitive. If anything, Mortal Empires is, I don't know, this is kind of a pro and a con at the same time. Mortal Empires is a multiplayer patch. If you go back to the patch notes, they pretty much made hundreds, if not thousands, of changes to all the individual units and characters to make them play good together, and play well, together in multiplayer. So they're all, for the most part, balanced and function really well, and a lot of tweaks, and it feels awesome. And it almost feels like there was too much focus on that and not enough focus on fixing bugs with the AI. So that the multiplayer ended up being pretty well balanced and very exciting to watch and to play, and which of course adds to the life of the game. But single player, in my opinion, is more important than multiplayer in this game because it's a primarily single player experience. Not to the point that I think you should do anything to harm the multiplayer for the sake of single player, but in that you should prioritize making sure the single player is a better experience. So, kind of talking about that, let's talk about bugs. Let's talk about the major ones that have caught my attention. The biggest bug that this game has, there are two that are really, really bad, to the point that I consider the campaign unplayable when these come up. Like, I can't play them because I don't enjoy them. The first of them is the artillery bug. So, you can literally test this right now if you're listening to this video, unless they magically put out a patch. That's when I drop this, or maybe you see this later. But if you go on as any faction with an artillery unit, so cannons, bolt throwers, rock lobbers, whatever you want to call them, and you target a unit controlled by the AI, they will try and dodge the projectile, or they'll do these really weird movements. And so, like, if you're playing dwarves and you take, like, a line of war machines, the AI will literally run around in this giant blobbed circle that looks just gross and is not at all fun to play against because it's trying to dodge the artillery shots. And the stupid thing about it, or the weird thing about it, rather, is that this wasn't a problem in Warhammer 2. Like, I played Warhammer 2, and unless I'm remembering wrong, which I'm pretty sure I'm not, you could target, you could play High Elves and Skaven and use your war machines, and it was fine. But then Mortal Empires comes out, and there's suddenly this horrible bug that causes the AI to just act completely retarded and, like, not intelligent at all. And it's very frustrating because that means if you take an artillery unit, which, if y'all don't know this about me, I really find artillery fun to use, you basically have broken the game. And this has been a problem now for almost 2 months, or a month, excuse me, since Mortal Empires came out in October. So for a month, they've had this horrible, basically game-breaking bug, and it's just sitting there. And honestly, it shouldn't have released with this bug. It's just bad. And the other one that I really dislike, that takes away a lot from the experience, is that the auto-resolve meters for the Skaven and the Greenskins, especially the Greenskin WAS, is completely broken. The auto-resolve meter is so off and so bad, it's ridiculous. Like, you can take a army of super elite Skaven and run them up to an army of, like, 10 swordsmen and 5 spearmen with an Empire general, and the auto-resolve will be like, yeah, nope, you totally get fucked. Not even close. And you're like, what? Like, I could take a 20 stack of clan rats against this, and I would win. And that's not even including my summons. Like, they added all these awesome in-battle abilities, and for the Skaven, these in-battle abilities are crucial to their gameplay, but then they didn't design the auto-resolve to take it into consideration. And that is a problem in Warhammer 2 as well. That's one of the 2 big problems with Warhammer 2, is that Skaven auto-resolve is just broken. So Skaven really struggle to be a notable presence on the campaign map. Which sucks, because Skaven are kind of supposed to be like this infectious disease, cancerous almost, a cancerous empire that just, like, swarms in and attacks all the weaker factions and, like, takes a bunch of ruins and, like, take advantage of other people fighting each other. And they're supposed to be really good at that, and instead they're really bad at it because they just get completely wiped out by everybody else. Like, Mortal Empires, you can get Hell Pit and Skaven Blight, but they very rarely expand. And even if they do expand, when one of the AIs finally decides to do something about it, they just get completely stomped. And the same goes for the Greenskins. One of the things I hate the most about Mortal Empires is that the Badlands always goes to the dwarves unless you directly intervene to do something to the dwarves, or you just get super lucky. But 9 times out of 10, the Greenskins get stomped. And it's because they rely on their WA mechanic, and it seems like the auto-resolve was almost balanced so that, like, if the Greenskins had a WA, the Dwarf AI would have a fighting chance, but somehow this turned into making it so that the Dwarf AI just can't lose unless the Greenskin AI is just completely overwhelming it. So if you play Mortal Empires right now, Karak Azul, Karak Hirn, like, all these Dwarf holds in Dwarf realms are going to win their respective fights unless they end up going up against Vampire Counts, who have a really strong auto-resolve. That's probably too strong. Where you have this issue where Greenskins should be a race that expands very aggressively, while Dwarves should expand very conservatively, where, they should be more careful and be better at defending, but not as good as expanding. It should expand slower. But instead, the AI plays the dwarves really aggressively, and the Greenskins suck at auto-resolve, so they just get completely wiped out. Which sucks. It really sucks, especially when you're, like, entering the western side of the old world. You will not see any Greenskins, because they all die really fast. The Skull Smashers and the, I think it's the Skull Takers. There's a group that's in the very northern, next to Marienburg, and there's another group that's south of Belagar starting position. They just get wiped crazy fast. And then the Crooked Moon usually can take his mountain range, but then he's stuck there for the rest of the game. Like, he can't expand because he's too bad at fighting. And that really sucks. Like, greenskins, just like Skaven, are supposed to be an infection that spreads. And it feels like instead they just get wiped out really quick. You know, the same goes for the Black Venom, who are the greenskins next to the Border Princes. You know, there are a lot of greenskins in the old world. There's like one settlement per mountain range. But the problem is, in all of the mountain ranges, they only own minor settlements. And they suck at auto-resolving, so they just die. And it just sucks. It makes the world feel less diverse than it should. And I consider these major issues with the Mortal Empires campaign that need to be fixed. However, once again, moving back onto a positive, the world does feel a lot more exciting. There is a lot more going on. It's nice that that you have all these different races interacting, and there's really cool ways to see them all clash and get to see really exciting things. I think the Southlands is probably the most exciting area because you don't have to cross the ocean, which is something we're going to talk about. But it has a really good mix of like vampire counts and Skaven and lizardmen and dwarves and greenskins. And there's probably going to be Tomb Kings down there. I imagine Tomb Kings are either coming out soon or coming out after the next DLC. But they're on their way. They have to be at this point. And so, like, the Southlands are super exciting and busy and awesome. And I love that. But, so kind of switching on to a con of that particular subject is that Mortal Empires also should have been more carefully designed to encourage continents to fight each other. Right now, there is a very small incentive for races to attack one another across the ocean for two primary reasons. The first is CA probably should have scrambled a few more of the new races into the old world to make things more exciting. Like, if I had been CA, I probably would have put a single Dark Elf faction in the very north of Norska, and I would have maybe encouraged the High Elves to attack Bretonia and vice versa, the AIs anyway. And the other thing I would have done is I would put another Skaven in the old world. You have the Skaven in Hell Pit, you have the Skaven in Skaven Blight. I probably would have added one more Skaven to the trio of mountains. So there's Carrick Ziflin, which is the middle mountains between Bretonia and the Empire. You have Carrick Ziflin, their minor settlement, and then the Orc settlement at the top. I probably would have made the middle settlement into a Skaven settlement. I think there's a Skaven city near there, covered in a book. I was actually looking at it the other day. I think it's called the Black Gulch, or it's the Black something. But there's a Skaven city near there. It's actually quite a bit closer to Quinnell's, but you can move it a bit. But that way you really get a nice mix of Skaven just kind of being all over the place. It might not have even hurt to put Skaven in the east as well. It would have been great to have Skaven pop up in probably like one of the Karak Kadrin areas, or put them just south of that. I forget what that hold is called. It's not Grom Peak. No, Grom Peak's way further south. It doesn't matter. But if you go east of Zufbar, that province that has like that super important gold mine, I probably would have made that a Skaven settlement as well, just to give a really good mix of Ratmen everywhere. And then the Lizardmen are, of course, in the Southlands, so you don't have to worry about them. But that comes to the final big problem with Mortal Empires and Total War Warhammer 2, which is that the ocean is a pain in the ass. Like, it's big and it's in the way, which makes sense. However, CA did not design a way to cross it reasonably. Because right now, if you want to cross the ocean, you have to make a 20 sack, essentially, who you pray to God is good at auto-resolving, because you can only auto-resolve on the ocean. So if you get in a fight with somebody, well, then you're fucked, because the AI tends to design armies that are better at auto-resolving and won't usually engage you on the ocean unless they know they can win. And if they catch you, you're dead. And that's it. You're dead. Which sucks. And the ocean's already treacherous to cross. It already takes forever. You can already get storms that take over an entire section and cause attrition, and all those things are fine. The problem is you're paying upkeep the entire time, and you have to auto-resolve, which are two major flaws that should have been solved in Warhammer 2. if you're going to cross continents, you know, at least in Warhammer 2, going from the Southlands to Lustria is kind of a pain, but it's not as big of a deal. But there should have been two things that I would recommend. Actually, you know what? We'll just leave it as a con, and then when we get to the suggestion section, we'll talk of it. So, there's really nothing else that I would consider like a huge con. Like, I know it sounds, and once again, it may sound like I'm ragging on the game, but you have to realize I've played it for so many hours, like hundreds of hours already, that I'm only able to talk about these problems because I've played so much of it. I can see these problems because when you play enough, you just kind of can't help but notice it. I will say another pro that I was not expecting was that the end turn timer for Mortal Empires is actually surprisingly short, like for what it is. I was actually really, really impressed with how they managed to make it as far as like time is concerned. Like, it can take a while at the start of the game, but if you just go into like the edit and make it so that it doesn't show the turns for like allies, neutral factions, and turn enemies on like fastest movement, you don't even have to hit the speed up button. It still moves really fast, which I enjoy. You know, that usually gives me enough time to like check my email or like read like a page of a book, but I read really fast. Usually sometimes I only get through a paragraph before my in turn time, excuse me. So I was really impressed with how they pulled that off. And the map is gorgeous. The game is gorgeous. It looks good. It feels good. It sounds good. The soundtrack for Warhammer 2 and the Mortal Empires is way better than the first game. And I liked the first game's music, but the music in this game is infinitely better. So now let's talk about suggestions. So if you're watching this video and you are like, what can I do to help or something, I would recommend, like, if you want, go onto the forums at Total War or TotalWar.com, go to the Total War subreddit, or just talk to me down in this YouTube video and hope that CA sees this video, which is possible, unlikely, but possible. There are a few big suggestions I would make. The first I've already talked about, which is have more racial integration of the second races in the old world. So, like, give us a Dark Elf faction in Norska. Give us Skaven in, like, 2 other mountain ranges. You know, one in the east and one in the west. Right now we only have one in the north and one in the south of the old world. It'd be great to have east and west thrown in there as well. And then another thing I would really like would be... to fix auto-resolve on the ocean, there should be island maps. So instead of it being whatever 2 fleets encounter each other, you just auto-resolve and pray to God, it should be that you can fight a real-time battle, but what it is the ships just disembark you on an island, or maybe you even fight just on a map that's like 2 ships just with a bunch of crap tying them together, and you just fight a regular battle just with like a lot of ocean around you. And this would also fix the problem that Black Arcs have, and that Black Arcs are kind of fun, but they're not really well defended because they have to auto-resolve to protect themselves. It would be really nice if Black Arcs were like really interesting looking maps, where like if you attack them, it's kind of like the Eagle Gates and the Phoenix Gates and stuff. It should just be a siege. So like you're just on this giant fortress that has all this Dark Elf imagery and construction and all that stuff, and you can see the ocean like far out, and you just have to run forward and try to like break into like one of the gates protecting the Black Arc's inner citadel and stuff. Because Black Arcs are giant floating fortresses. They do have tiered layers, so it makes sense that it would basically be like a siege, except for you wouldn't have time to build siege equipment because there's nothing to build siege equipment from because you're on the ocean, and you have to attack quickly to catch the Black Arc off guard and take it down. So I think that would be way more exciting and way more approachable, and make ocean travel less just stupid. The third thing I would recommend is that right now there is no easy way to have a New World faction invade the Old World and vice versa, which is kind of one of like the big exciting points about the game, unless of course you're in the Southlands. So one thing I would recommend is what I call a crusade mechanic. And what that should be is you should have the ability through like a special building or tech or just like a button that every single race has access to. You should have the ability to basically create an army, or like, I would either say create an army or spawn an army on a different continent. So, like, if you're a New World faction, like, let's say you're playing Mazdamundi, you could send a Lizardman Crusade, and you could send it to, like, Bretonia, or the Old World, somewhere in the Old World. I think the better way to do it, like, a really fun way to do it, would be if you could just generate one over there, but that wouldn't really make as much sense. Probably the better thing would be if there were a special mechanic where you could summon an army that has vastly reduced, or just no upkeep. But the counterplay to that, to prevent it from being abused, would have to be that it has to settle a settlement. It has to either take a ruin or occupy a settlement within like 20 or 30 turns. And if it attacks a settlement, its only option is to occupy. Something like that. That way you can't abuse it to, like, just fart around the ocean or something like that. Like, CA would kind of have to time it on how long it takes to sail across the ocean to get to a relevant settlement. I imagine 20 turns would be enough. Probably maybe too many, maybe 10 turns. You'd want it to be enough that they don't have time to just completely fuck around. And they would also need to have the caveat that these special armies could only occupy settlements. That way they're just not running around sacking stuff and searching ruins for treasure and all that crap. But I think that would give a really nice incentive to, like, hey, let's go establish this new empire across the ocean. And when it takes that settlement, it vanishes. That way, you don't just have this huge army, or maybe after you take a settlement, its upkeep reduction goes away. Something like that. And that could be a really interesting way to get you an army that can take a settlement, and then you can start building your new empire very quickly. Of course, these are just ideas I'm shooting off. There's at least 10,000 of you guys. So, if you have your own ideas, feel free to post them down in the comment section, and we can kind of debate back and forth and stuff like that. Let me know what you think of my ideas. Let me know if you think you have any ideas. Are there any, like, notable bugs you noticed in Mortal Empires or Total Warhammer 2 that you think need to be addressed, that ruined your experience or made it less enjoyable? And what things did you enjoy about the game? Like, these are all things I like to read. I read every single comment. I always read every single comment. I check multiple times a day to read every single comment on videos. So I do read them. I don't always respond to all of them just because there's a lot of them and, like, I gotta do stuff. But you know how it is. So I've already been talking for 32 minutes. I think that's plenty of time. I hope you guys are all doing great. I love you all very much wherever you are. I hope I can get out the next Legendary Lord video for patrons before Thanksgiving. That's the plan. So for the rest of you, it'll come out either on or after. Yeah, so I hope you all have a great day. Think that's pretty much everything I had. So I love you all very much. I'll speak with you again soon. Have a great day. Bye.